In recent weeks, the world has been shaken by news that could completely change the balance of power in the Middle East and global politics. Saudi Arabia, the main ally of the United States for decades, has suddenly taken a step that until recently seemed impossible. The kingdom is abandoning the petrodollar and beginning to conclude deals with China and Russia in national currencies. At first glance, it may look like just another round of the global trade war, but according to Financial Times and Wall Street Journal citing diplomatic sources, this decision hides a far more serious agenda. According to Western intelligence, Saudi Arabia may become a new nuclear player, gaining access to technologies and weapons that were strictly prohibited until yesterday. In official statements, Saudi authorities insist that the kingdom remains committed to peace and has no intention of creating its own nuclear bomb. Moreover, Riyadh has for decades claimed that its nuclear program is purely peaceful. However, as experts from Carnegie Endowment and Brookings Institution note, this is exactly how the path toward weapons of mass destruction always begins. Under the cover of energy projects, reactors are built, research centers are developed, specialists are trained. Saudi Arabia already has all of this. The country is actively developing nuclear energy, inviting foreign contractors, and purchasing equipment. But the main question is why? If the country has enough oil for centuries to come, the answer is simple. Energy is a cover, and the real goals lie elsewhere. Now it turns out that the agreement with China and Russia has a secret annex that no one openly talks about. According to The Guardian citing British intelligence sources, Saudi Arabia has received guarantees of a nuclear umbrella from Pakistan. Formally, this is an agreement on mutual security. But unofficially, it is about the direct transfer of technologies and possibly even ready-made warheads. Pakistan has one of the most rapidly developing nuclear programs in the world, and it is no secret that Riyadh once financed its launch. Back in the 1980s, there were rumors in Western analytical circles that the Pakistani bomb was partly created with Saudi money. And now this debt may be repaid, but Pakistan does not act alone. Behind it stands China, which has long sought a way to gain a foothold in the Middle East, not only economically, but also militarily. Beijing understands that by granting Saudi Arabia nuclear potential, it kills two birds with one stone. It weakens the position of the United States and strengthens a new coalition of countries that want to free themselves from dependence on the dollar. Russia, according to RIA Novosti and Al Jazeera, actively supports this process, since its own relations with Riyadh are experiencing a second honeymoon against the backdrop of energy partnership and shared interests in OPEC+. All this is forming into a strategic triangle: Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, China, with the support of Russia. Washington is in shock. The administration of Donald Trump, busy escalating the tariff war with China and endless trade negotiations, clearly did not expect such a stab in the back from its Middle Eastern ally. According to insiders cited by Politico, panic reigns in the White House. Pentagon analysts warn that the emergence of nuclear weapons in Saudi Arabia would completely change the strategic balance in the region. Israel, possessing its own nuclear triad, would now face another player whose motives are not always predictable. Iran, which for many years has been developing its own program, could find the perfect justification for a sharp acceleration. Turkey, which has the technological base, would also not want to be left aside. The result would be a regional arms race, where everyone would strive to acquire a nuclear bomb in order not to remain the weak link. For now, the Saudis deny all accusations. Their representatives at the United Nations claim that the country only wants to guarantee security in an unstable world. But in the corridors of diplomatic negotiations, very different words are being spoken. According to a former American diplomat interviewed by the New York Times, the Saudis are tired of being a vassal of Washington and are now playing their own game. China and Russia are giving them what the United States would never have offered: nuclear weapons as a guarantee of independence. And that is why the oil deal in yuan and rubles became possible. It is not just a trade contract, but part of a larger bargain where oil has become the currency of exchange for security. For the United States, this is a blow on several fronts. First, the petrodollar system that has underpinned Washington's financial power for the past half-century is collapsing. Second, the Middle East is seeing the emergence of a new nuclear player, and this completely changes the logic of American presence. Third, a new alliance is being formed, that could become an alternative to Western blocs. If Saudi Arabia truly acquires nuclear weapons, it will be the greatest geopolitical defeat for America since the fall of Saigon. The world stands on the threshold of a new era. Only yesterday it seemed that the nuclear club was limited and closed. But today we see new players knocking at its door, and Saudi Arabia, it seems, is ready to enter despite all the protests from Washington. Now the question is different. Can America stop this process? Or are we witnessing the birth of a new nuclear power that will change the rules of the game for decades to come? As details of the Saudi deal with China and Russia become public, a chain reaction is beginning on the world stage. Europe, traditionally dependent on Middle Eastern oil, finds itself in a highly awkward position. Germany and France are trying to maintain neutrality, but according to Der Spiegel and Le Monde, concern is growing in Brussels. If oil transactions start to shift massively into yuan, this will threaten the entire financial architecture of the European Union, which is tied to dollar reserves. Moreover, European diplomats admit that the prospect of Riyadh acquiring nuclear weapons causes far more alarm than trade changes. In that case, the European Union will find itself in the shadow of a new unstable nuclear power whose politics are determined not by parliaments and elections, but by the will of a royal family. Israel is voicing particular concern. According to Haaretz and Jerusalem Post, emergency meetings of the National Security Council have already been held in Tel Aviv. Israeli generals openly state that if the Saudis acquire nuclear weapons, the balance of deterrence in the Middle East will collapse. Until now, Israel felt itself the only holder of a nuclear shield in the region and therefore untouchable. But with the emergence of an equal rival, Israel may shift to a strategy of preemptive strikes, and in Washington they understand perfectly well that this is the main risk. A regional war may break out not because of Iran, as had been assumed for decades, but because of Saudi Arabia, until recently considered a United States ally. At the same time, Iran, according to Al Monitor and United Nations insiders, is already using the situation to its advantage. Tehran declares that if the international community swallows the Saudi nuclear program, then Iran reserves the right to accelerate its own. For the Iranian authorities, this is the perfect justification. Why is Saudi Arabia allowed while we are not? In essence, we are witnessing the birth of a new architecture of international relations. Saudi Arabia is transforming from a junior partner of the United States into an independent player, armed not only with oil and money, but also with potential nuclear weapons. For Washington, this is one of the most painful blows of recent decades, comparable only to the loss of Iran in 1979. Only this time, the situation is complicated by the fact that around the Saudis, a powerful alliance of China, Russia, and Pakistan is taking shape.